Hello, everyone. Happy to see you all for the first ever EA NYC Rings Symposium. This is a brand new initiative in which groups of New York City members from the EA community work together over the past 4 months in small teams on an initiative of their choosing. And so we have 4 teams tonight that are presenting and showcasing their work. We have one on promoting EA awareness in New York City. We have one that was working on a international tech project. We have one that was working on basic income and promoting its success and awareness. And we have another one that was working on high impact policy review. I don't even have any exposure into what these teams were really working on, except for the one that I was involved in myself. And so I'm just as excited as you are, because I have no idea what to expect. And so really happy to see the fruits of all their labor over the past 4 months, because I know they've been working really hard on what they've been building and co-creating. And so I'm really excited that they get to share it with all of us. And so let's jump right in. We have the awareness group first. That's the one that myself and Rishi were a part of as well. And we can begin with Mike Covell, if you want to unmute yourself and give a kind of an intro as to like where we started and where we were at, and kind of the projects that we so some of the initiatives that we worked on over the course of the 4 months.
Sure. So the EA NYC has been involved in a lot of like organized talks, but had not done a lot of outreach before. So we started to, I guess we made a couple observations, and one is that campus universities are one place in which EA chapters are often started. But when you start a chapter at a university, the only people who participate are those that are like self-selected into the EA group. And the other observation is that there's a lot of resources that are applicable to students. So putting these things together, we were interested in putting together some talks that would be presented to college students. And where we started with it was by scheduling talks for class, like philosophy classes. So we scheduled, I think, 7 talks altogether at Baruch College. So that's where we started. And then we put together a 3-person panel. So Danny Lippitz he's an educator, and he does talks at college level and also the elementary level. And his talk is really geared toward giving a user perspective of EA. So it's very interactive. He gets students to like actually look at the research on different charities and kind of make decisions of which ones are the best choice. So he provided kind of a user perspective on the panel. I provided an academic perspective because I used to teach at Baruch College. And then Arushi sat in on one of the talks, Aaron sat in on 2 of the others, and they provided like a practitioner perspective and like personal, and talked about some resources that were available to students. So I guess I'm under time, but that's in some like what we did. So we gave 3 talks so far. We have at least 4 more in May. And this is going to potentially be an ongoing project that we could elaborate or expand to like department level talks, like symposiums, and also career services talks. Although those talks would like take a different form. But this is a kind of an exciting path, because we just started at Baruch College, but there's so many different universities in New York City that this could be expanded to other universities and the graduate level as well as the undergraduate level. So there's a lot of potential.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. That was one of the projects that we worked on. We had a second one kind of coinciding with these, because the goal of the ring was to promote awareness of EA in New York City. And so the other project that we really worked on was this donation campaign, this fundraising campaign that we'll be unveiling. And this is, I guess, the first public time where we're announcing it. So, woo! But we'll be hosting a fundraising campaign for GiveWell and GiveWell listed charities that we're calling the Donate Your Day campaign. And the goal is to get young, or to get kind of budding EA people who might be inclined towards effective altruism to donate a day's worth of their salary. And it's essentially the try giving pledge of giving what we can. And the goal is to expose people to EA aligned thoughts when they're donating to specific charities. And so right now, the plan is to have kind of build this campaign. We have the website. It's not public yet, but we have this website built out where people can pledge to donate their daily salary. And so let's say you make a few $100 in a day or like $30 an hour or something, then you would donate that amount, and then you would kind of be brought to this GiveWell directed page and be able to donate that amount of money. And the hope in that mindset is not just, it's not a one-off fundraiser of saying like, hey, pick this specific charity. It's like, hey, you should check out GiveWell and you should read their resources and you should check out their research and you should kind of engage with this, because this is a style of thinking. It's not just a, hey, we're trying to tug on your heartstrings and like get you to donate to like a specific charity, this one-off thing. And Michael Middleton, I'll pass it off to you because you, a big component of this is, you know, in terms of fundraising, it's engaging people and encouraging them to like click on this website. And so we have a video and production that Mike Middleton is like a video producer. This is a useful use of his skills. And Mike Middleton, I'd love for you to talk about the video that we're working on.
Yeah, so thanks. So we're going to be working on a video, approximately, let's say 45 seconds to a minute in length, depending on the final script. But the idea of the video is to really sort of engage people in the New York City area, very geographically specific, whether they are EA already or are someone who doesn't even realize that they have an EA mindset, to just sort of get people to reflect on the fact that as New York City is coming back, as their lives start to return to some semblance of normal, they have the ability to make this small, for most people, gesture of donating their day and to assist people through a variety of GiveWell charities who may not necessarily have the same fortune that they have. So a reminder that we can return to normal, but not be returning to the old normal. Our hope is really to engage people across a broad spectrum. And as part of this, we'll have a standard script, standard opening, but we would like to contemplate including actual quick mentions from people in the EA community that we can get to just sort of quickly, even on like a Zoom video like this, just sort of look at the camera and say, hey, my name is Mike, and I'm donating my day on June 23rd to this, whatever, really quick, so we can cram a few of them into the video. Gives us a lot of options. It gives us the option to target certain ones for certain demographics. You know, if we're going to have one that we might have a Facebook ad for people, you know, my age, a little bit older than the average here, or we might just have it, you know, a mix of different people each time. We might, you know, who knows, maybe we'll decide that there's a borough specific one. You know, ultimately we would just like to have a lot of, you know, faces of people that are really going to do this, just quickly jumping in at the end there. You know, here I am and I'm donating my day. Don't have to say how much or anything like that. And all the other details, June 23rd, that'll be handled in the actual, you know, structure of the video itself. So real quick opportunity to jump in. So we'll be posting some sort of instruction set on how you can participate if you'd like to, and guidance on, you know, what the script will be, you know, and so forth. But obviously, regardless of that, we'll be hoping that everyone can give us a lot of support for June 23rd in advance when this video comes out, and then sharing it with their friends. And there might be other things too. There might be, you know, a filter or something of that nature for social media sharing. Some of those details we're still working out.
Thanks, Mike. And then in terms of other help that we were asking for, AJ, would you make the ask?
Sure. Yeah, we're not asking for a lot, but we would like to tap the talents of the EA NYC community. For instance, we're probably going to need a graphic designer to help design the website and the announcement. Also, one idea we had was that in addition to people in our community, if we could get some recognizable faces in the video saying, hey, I'm donating my day, like, you know, sort of local New York celebrities, B or C list or A list. We got nothing against A list celebrities. So if anyone knows or is friends of someone who would be willing to just say, yeah, I'm going to donate my day. I mean, all we're asking is like give to charity. So it's not a controversial ask, I think. And then also we're going to, you know, be doing a social media campaign and try and put Facebook ads out, for instance. And Mike Middleton knows a good amount about that. But if there's anyone else who is savvy in internet campaign or social media campaigns, we would love to hear from you.
Sweet. Thanks, AJ. And that's about it for the EA NYC awareness promotion ring. And we'll pass it on to the question component. I've seen a couple of questions in the chat. So I'll pull them up here and ask them. The question that Jacob asked, the attendance and engagement of the talks. Mike Covell, would you be able to speak to the kind of engagement in the talks of the intros?
Kind of. I think it's hard to gauge engagement with the Zoom style talks that we were doing. And that's actually something that we're going to work on a little more. Like Danny has some really interesting interactive techniques and he collects data during. So there's probably actually an empirical answer to that I just don't know because I haven't looked at the data in depth, but it was okay. And I think that it's like we got 27 or like up to 30, like 15 to 30 students. And these are students who would probably not have like attended a talk if there was like an EA chapter at Baruch. So engagement is one interesting factor, but also just kind of like, even if engagement is low, like we're still reaching people we wouldn't have otherwise reached with this kind of approach.
Mm-hmm. Sean asked if there's any thought about presenting more to the institutional philanthropy sector, which is certainly a big, there's a lot of like family foundations. I don't think that's something that we've really focused on, though it's definitely something that we ought to consider because there is like there's tons of philanthropic organizations that are based and headquartered in New York City. And so if we can like align them, or certainly not even necessarily the people, but like their chiefs of staff. And, you know, sometimes if we can get the ears of the people that the donors are listening to, then that's like that's another strategy that, no, it's not something that we've considered, but it's something that we ought to.
Well, Aaron, on that point, because it's a great idea. One of the things we quickly discussed, but we realized was out of scope for the initial one, was possibly targeting some future EA talks and other materials for people in that sector, as well as like, you know, brokers, advisors, et cetera,
Mm-hmm.
New York family offices, et cetera. So I think there's a lot to that we should come back to maybe as a next ring or whatever, because I think it's a great idea.
Mm-hmm. Sweet. If there's no more other questions on this ring, we can move on to the Open Tech International ring with Kristen.
There is another question from Shrug.
Oh yeah, someone just wants to, what cost sectors, demographics are you thinking of targeting, or are you sticking more to the general audience? We mostly, I mean, we did focus on students. It's very easy to get students because they're, you know, kind of centralized in this little university melting pots, and that's also because Center for Effective Altruism really does want to focus on students. But it's true. But as Mike Middleton had mentioned, that we want to focus on folks possibly who are like in like brokers or people who are working in finance as well. We also tried thinking about different tech talks, like talks at different tech companies. We know that some members in the EA NYC community have like given like EA intro talks at their workplaces, and so that's definitely something to consider. And that's also going to depend on everyone on this call. If you have friends or family or other connections, I guess that's another ask. If you have any places where you think that these intro talks would be well serviced, then let us know, and you should message us and email me or email anyone on the ring and then say like, hey, you should talk to this, like at my workplace we could use you. So any other thoughts or suggestions we're definitely all ears.
Yeah, I would second that. If you have any thoughts or any feedback, any suggestions, I'm definitely interested. So please contact me, let me know.
Totally. All right, moving on to the next ring. Kristen, take it away. Kristen, you there? Hello.
Oh, apologies, I was muted. One moment and let me share. Hopefully it can see my desktop. Oh, sorry, this is a new computer and it needs to see. Sorry, I'll be right back.
Totally, no worries. I guess we could also move on to the basic income ring if we want to swap places. Do you think that would make sense?
Yeah, I think so. Let's give Kristen a minute to figure out her tech stuff. So.
Yeah, let's move on to the next ring. All right, basic income team, you're up. Take it away.
Hey, can everyone see and hear me? Cool. I will start off by saying that we did not have a very well rehearsed presentation, so I will not be cycling through every member of the team, but just so you guys know who everyone is, Akshay, Sean, and Lathan are on the line if you guys want to come off mute and say hi.
Hello.
Hello. Apologies for that. Was there a
Chris,
question?
I think we're gonna do the basic income group and then come back to you so you can figure out your tech stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, cool. Well, hopefully we'll get a few more spaces later, but I can give a brief overview of what we were trying to achieve with this. So I'll start off by saying that I'm not a long-term member of the EA community, but I've already been very impressed with the community here and just what resources can really pull together when people are on the same wavelength. So I was introduced to the community when I was trying to find someone who understood Finnish to read the Finnish basic income study with me. And I don't really remember, I think I like posted on Facebook and someone was like, have you checked with the EA ring? They're very interested in basic income. And that's kind of how I was introduced to the community. And from there, I was able to find someone who isn't here on the call with us, but she is a Finnish national who helped with reading the study. And I think one of the things that really stood out to me as we were going through all of this was the importance of context on a day-to-day level when it comes to really evaluating the impact of basic income to people who may or may not be necessarily invested in the idea. So when we started working on this, one of the things that we were trying to do was capture what the day-to-day events would feel like for someone who is pretty middle of the road and maybe going through some of life's common crises, and how they would handle the problem differently, knowing that they have something that is more of a support versus not having any level of support at all. I would say that we had pretty large aspirations when we first started this project. We wanted to create like a full game, but what it has boiled down to is that we have created a crisis generator where you can kind of see like what are things that people have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, how would they deal with it in a current world, and then how would that be different if they had a form of UBI available to them. And the reason why we came up with the game idea as an execution is because I think as we were talking about basic income as a community or as a group, we were noticing that there was a lot of resources available that were very in-depth and research-focused, policy-focused, maybe not the most easy for the average person to grok, and also not the most shareable when it comes to raising awareness of basic income and kind of like getting people to understand what that really means. So we were really focused on presenting something that would be very accessible, that would provide resources at the end, but it would also have, kind of an engagement aspect. And then also focused on making it relevant to young people, even people who maybe are thinking, like, not really thinking about that at all in terms of how they're planning their lives. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Lathan, who is our delightful programmer who has pulled the game together.
Cool. Thanks for that, Sarah. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. Let me know if you can or cannot see that. I'm just going to assume that you guys can. So yeah, I programmed this game in R, specifically using the package Shiny. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with that programming language, but let's just go ahead and run that. And the game will load up. And the basic, oh, hold on one sec. Okay, there we go. So it's like Sarah said, it's a crisis generator. Pretty much the idea is simple. You generate a crisis, you click that button, you receive a prompt of some situation ranging from chronic to acute severity. And essentially, how the quote unquote game works is you engage with it by thinking about the prompt and thinking, okay, how much do I know? What would I do in this situation? So let's say we just say 10,000 US dollars. We check our answer. The answer pops up. You can view where this answer came from. We'll open it up in a new browser tab. So whatever your browser is. So let's just wait for that to load. So you see where this game gets, or where we have gotten the information from. And if we go back, this button then pops up. What happens with UBI? If we click that, essentially another prompt will appear that shows, with a monthly UBI of a certain amount, this is what happens. And basically, you just keep going through it. You generate a new crisis, and answer whatever answer. And then let's just say 10,000 US dollars again. Check your answer, and that's basically the game. It just runs through scenarios and it allows users to engage with it and be able to think, okay, this is the reality. What happens if the reality is with UBI? And I'll give it back to Sarah now.
Thanks, Lathan. So as you guys saw, the game is still in its opening stages. We were just talking about it today, and I think that we can get this to a more presentable stage within a month. Our goal is to kind of like sharpen up some of the corners when it comes to the copy, as well as create some more scenarios. I did have a couple of questions, I guess, for the panel and for people in general, in terms of whether or not there's an opportunity to host it within a EA property, as well as similar call to actions from the previous group, if there's any graphic designers who might be interested in donating their time towards making this look a little bit snappier and more shareable.
In answer to the first question, I think it'd be super cool to maybe we can have like a rings showcase on our website of past rings and what their projects have been, and this would be something we could link to as oh, this is what the basic income group did, and I'd be very excited to profile these projects in that way. So
I see some questions in the chat, so I can start responding. Also, if anyone else in the group wants to, you're absolutely more than welcome. The data entered is mostly a knowledge check. It's a way to get you to engage with the scenario more because you're kind of forced to think about it and put yourself in that position. We also have an idea for, a future evolution of this game would be that you can choose what amount is the quote unquote UBI handout. So it would allow for data collection onto what people usually think is the appropriate monthly amount. I think there's a lot of these numbers that are being thrown around by politicians, and people aren't always trusting of that, where they're I don't know how you got to this number. I feel a different number would make more sense to me. So part of it would be also gathering people's thoughts on what that range would be like, and then you can get a readout of, generally people think that a payout of between 475 to 525 is reasonable, or so on and so forth.
Nice, that's awesome. In terms of, Jacob just asked a question, we never had a game before. Who do you envision playing it, and how do you envision kind of spreading this?
Yeah, I think, anyone can play it. It's a very simple game. It's not, very complex. The idea is hopefully that as people go through it, they're oh, this is interesting. I didn't really think about things this way. I might share it with my friends. I think our goal initially was to focus on people who don't know much about the basic income in general. So that would be the general group. I guess internet savvy people who have access to, the web as it stands. It is The Price is Right.
Awesome. Super cool. If no one has any other questions for the basic, what are some important messages you think the game can convey? Great question, Family Empowerment Media. Some important messages that you think the game can convey.
Yeah, so I just realized I missed a part of it, which is that we also see this as being a vehicle of resources. So at some point, if you click through a couple of games, it might say, it seems like you're interested in basic income. Here's some additional resources that you can click to that other people have put together for research. And so in a way, it's a portal to deeper learning about what basic income is and what the current state of it is and how it's being proposed. And I think there's a couple of different proposals floating around the US. I think the other important message is like the rule of large numbers about crises in general being unavoidable. So, the world is constantly changing and people aren't always able to uproot their lives in order to find a better situation. So yeah, that would be, I think, generally the message. In terms of,
Sorry, if I could just add one more message, that we're trying to convey with the game. A lot of the questions we ask are about raising awareness about the day-to-day realities of Americans. So for example, one of the scenarios is, you're an elementary school teacher and for whatever reason you need to take up a second job. How much can the average person usually make by taking on a second job? So getting Americans to ask themselves if they, understand and can quantify, the basic realities that many people face.
Yeah. I think the two examples that popped up, just because they're randomly generated, they were maybe not the most illustrative of the people in poverty question. But we do have, a large bank, and that includes dealing with unemployment, that includes dealing with an economic downturn, even the pandemic. We originally modeled this off of a couple of different career paths, and they include being a restaurant worker, being a teacher, and also one that was supposed to capture a different reality of being a doctor. And then it would kind of play out how much of a difference this really makes. But also, I think, if any of the people listening here have specific things that they would like to be added, that is definitely something that we're open to feedback for. It's just been, the four of us in this group coming up with a list of things, and we're obviously not the most representative of every single person in America. So this can expand.
Super cool. All right. If there's no other questions for the basic income group, we can move back to Kristen. Thank you, Sarah, so much, and for the rest of the team. Kristen, let's see if your tech stack is fortunate is Sarah's. Kristen, are you there? Hello, Kristen. Are you with us?
It looks like it's muted.
Hello, use the one without my face on it. I'm participant.
Cool.
I think.
Oh, shoot, do I need to make you? Okay, gotcha. I will make you co-host. Now you are co-host, and now we should have no problems.
Oh man. Share screen. Host disabled participant screen sharing.
No, but you're not a participant anymore. That's so interesting to see. Oh, I see what you mean. You want me to make the co-host of the one that it doesn't have. Gotcha. So there's two computers you're presenting. Now you should try. No.
Because my computer has this newest
No
arm.
worries. Oh, it's okay. We're all casual here.
There we go. Desktop 2, share. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. Perfect.
Success. All right. Hello, everyone. I'm going to give a brief introduction. Working on open source technology for the World Bank in Tanzania in 2017 and 18 taught me that if I was going to code in the sector, technical bottlenecks were not going to be the only ones I would encounter. I needed a team that could plan, implement, and maintain functionally sustainable solutions and products to support global health and development. In Tanzania, I saw one-off technical solutions that were built and abandoned, often half implemented, used where scalable, maintained tech would leave a much bigger mark. And I saw that Big Aid was implementing projects remotely without checking in to monitor and evaluate impact. and then updating its actions accordingly. And so Open Tech International was my nonprofit aimed to focus on this. I worked with the World Bank on water software, water utility software, and then went to Australia and studied integrated water management to fill in some of the softer skills. And then COVID came along. And I ended up starting a small grant program, grants of under $10,000 to reduce suffering caused by COVID-19. The idea was focusing on bottlenecks that allow us to use existing resources a lot more effectively. We were able to raise $40,000, mostly from private donors, as well as the EA donor lottery. And we successfully routed 100% minus a couple transfer fees to 6 organizations in 4 countries, despite not being an official NGO at the time. I recruited the International Alumni Center of my master's program to help network. We were able to provide 8,000 people with direct aid, improve access to hand washing with soap for 250,000 people in sub-Saharan Africa and Nepal, and with low tech and high tech solutions. And we were able to install year-round access to safe drinking water for 6,000 people. However, this was done by 2 volunteers, and it was a lot of hassle, and there were like a lot of manual processes that made it a lot harder. And so with the EA Ring, we decided to automate this process. This is who we are. I'm Kristen. Karen is the head of the International Water Center Alumni Network. Helped me with the Bottleneck Fund round 1. And then Tomer and Kat also helped out on this project. And Kat was going to walk you through some of what we did.
Hi, everyone. I'm Catherine, but you all can call me Kat. So I'm just going to walk you through some of what we did for this, for the ring specifically. So this is an overview, but we'll also show you some images to help you get a sense of, some of the behind the scenes and what we actually got done. So we started out with this huge, body of work across several different characters, if you will. There were people who were applying for the grants. There were people who were evaluating, those applicants. There were the fund managers and the people actually funding. So the first thing we did is we mapped out the journey of those different customers. This is for users or characters, however you want to think about it. This is just one example of those 4. And then through that, you can jump to the next one, Kristen. This was like an output of those journey maps we created that really was an overview of all the different kinds of work we could potentially do. And so you'll notice it's categorized by the type of work involved, the type of user, and we noted different places where we were trying to be, for example, very cost sensitive, or we were trying to make something really easy to update. This was our initial criteria for the different kinds of work we would do. And we picked a couple of the highest priority, easiest tasks from this list. You'll see here, this is the wiki we created. So this was both a tool for us to use internally to keep track of our progress, but also we imagined eventually as we'd be making this open source for other groups to use, this could be something that people could read and say, okay, here's a great way to, in a low cost way, allow people to make a donation. Here's a great way to, do whatever it is. So with that in mind, if you go to the next one, yeah, this is just an example of one of those wiki pages that we worked on. So this is how we chose the tool we used to make a donation, and also how it works. So someone could both see our reasoning behind it and also how to set it up in a similar way. And if you jump ahead, this was actually part of that mechanism for making a donation. It's a tool where you can more or less for free, there are fees, but you can get the donor to cover them, allow people to make a donation. So this was something that we found through our research and a few different options we compared. and you'll see later, but we did make a proof of concept website, and we were actually able to like embed the form with which people make the donations there. So anyways, it ended up being a pretty good fit for us. If you go to the next slide, this is just one more example of like a wiki page we set up for sending emails in an automated way. And if you go to the next slide, this is our Airtable, and it actually doesn't have the emails tab open. It has this other tab, which I believe is related to the actual like evaluation criteria and automating that piece of it. But this is just meant to be illustrative of some of the workflows we were setting up there. And if you go to the next section, yeah, there you go. This is just an overview of what we did on the like website development side. So we, for this piece of the project, had some conversations around like the functionality and content we'd like to present, how we could set up the environment. We ended up with going with a tool called Jekyll because it allows you to basically have the content separated from the actual like design of the site, and makes it therefore pretty easy to update without having to rely on a paid service like Squarespace or something like that. So if you go to the next slide, you can see this is just our notes and hashing through both like what tools we might use, but also what the content might include. And then next slide, this is just being run locally right now, but this is like a proof of concept. We have like some of the copy written, and we have a couple blog posts that we wrote, and really just sort of got that Jekyll environment set up to prove that it was a tool worth using. And then I think the rest of this deck is really more for like people to access these links later, but this shows some of our wiki and some other links, and just a few other things we put together. I think Kristen might be best to speak on the next couple slides because they're about like what help we might need going forward. But I can say at a high level, like there's some like high code and low code opportunities to iterate on what we have.
So it's been valuable to start working with volunteers and to work with Kat and Tomer and Karen, who are really helpful in thinking about things both in the course of this ring and for the larger organization, which is a much longer process. I think we didn't fully orient toward just trying to deliver something in this sprint. We focused on getting things done that would be successful for us and effective for us in the long term. It's been really interesting for me to focus on the bottleneck fund. And as I look around at tech jobs in the humanitarian sector, so many of them are looking for ways to manage their grants and have these databases set up. And so it's interesting to like see the overlaps in that. The hope is that we can produce something that other organizations can use as well as us, and that it is at an affordable and well-documented level for anyone to use, as well as having a way for us to give and take money. We're trying to make it so that by using things like Jekyll, we're trying to make it so that people who aren't developers can effectively help. And so that's basically where we are. And we can be reached out to if anyone is interested in potentially giving some time.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, Kristen. Thank you so much, Kat. This is really awesome work. Technical questions that we had. What's the difference between your usage of Airtable and Notion? Could you use Notion to do what Airtable provides? And how many people are programming this?
So currently, it's Karen, who has 3 children at home and currently has COVID. Tomer, who's giving a few hours a week, and Kat and I. I'm the only software engineer on the team, and I've been working on it part-time, adding things here and there. There's some interest from a couple other people who I'll reach out to this week I think it took us a little while to get going. We did a lot of the planning before Christmas and then kind of had to take a break during the holidays because of all the travel that was going on in all of our different lives and figuring out the time zone that works between France and Portugal and the UK and Texas and now San Francisco. And so we figured out some of those things. We now have a meeting time. We now have a list of tasks to be able to assign people. We can start working. Notion is used mostly for the more like project management and documentation sorts of things. Airtable is our database, if that makes sense, for the grant module. We're using it less for the planning and more for the data management.
Makes sense. And then Mike asked if you could walk us through the first two visuals that Kat presented. I think that was the one pager. If you go back a couple of slides.
Yeah. These ones.
Yeah.
Is this what you meant?
I think so.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this was one of like 4 like user maps we made, and this was a way of a tool we used to decide what to work on essentially. And actually this one was really cool because we were able to sort of interview or at least like co-create this with someone who was a project evaluator, which made it a lot more accurate because they were speaking to their own experience actually evaluating projects.
What's a user map?
I'm using that term like pretty casually and maybe it means different things in different contexts, but that's a really great question. The point really was to like identify different actions that were taking place over time, different like opportunities to things that we could work on within them. And I think you said the first 2 visuals. So the second one was like a table we made in Notion, which was the tool we were using as the wiki. And really we wanted to basically like take what we had, which was sort of like a whiteboard, and make it like more manipulable data. So like this was like pretty similar to a lot of like the content that was in this like image before. But now it's like in a table where we can say, you know, here's something in progress, here's something that we're going to do, or like, here's this user, here's that user, like all these different like data attributes. And actually, I don't know how familiar people are with Notion, but one thing that's cool is you can present like the same data in a few different ways. This is just the default table view, but you can also look at it as a board, which just basically allows you to like track the progress of different things.
Yeah. We use the basic Kanban board during we set up weekly meetings. So we've been meeting on Tuesdays and using the Kanban board to assign people's tasks and check in on how that all is going.
Awesome. And then Jacob asked, is there any prospect of measuring the impact of the project using something quantitative like QALYs?
So I want to like mention 2 aspects of this. One of them has to do with, you can certainly do that for the grants, the end grant.
Uh-oh, we lost her.
I think Kristen, her audio got caught, so I might infer what she might have been going to say. She was saying, I think that like the grant itself is one thing that you can measure the impact of, but I think the question was more about like this work and how might you measure the impact of it, which I think is an interesting question too, because if we can get this well documented in a state where many people could use it, then you'd also even want to measure the impact of like other projects that use the same tech stack. So that's not really an answer to your question, but I think it's like an aspect of what I think is interesting. But I don't know that we've really thought too closely about it yet. Is probably the most accurate way to answer that.
Makes sense. All right, well, I would love to thank you so much, Open Tech International. It's an awesome project. And I'd love to finish off with our final EA NYC Ring, which is the High Impact Policy Review with Arushi. And I'll stop sharing Kristen's screen.
Hi. Yeah, hi guys. So I was working on the EA policy ring with Caitlin, who's also on the call. And yeah, so basically we started with kind of just wanting to figure out something to explore at this sort of intersection of effective altruism and US policy in particular. Obviously, like EA is a project all about like trying to make the world better, and policy is a really important tool to do that. And there's, I think, sort of not enough EAs working in the policy space. And we just kind of wanted to explore like some ideas to change that. So we had a couple of different ideas and ended up landing on working on a US policy newsletter, which we launched 4 weeks ago. So this will be our 3rd edition this week of the newsletter. And yeah, basically, the newsletter, we're trying to basically make it really accessible both to EAs and non-EAs. And it's a bi-weekly newsletter just covering US policy news impacting like some of the most important cause areas that we think people should be focusing on. And so it's like a lot of kind of like the traditional EA cause areas and then some things outside of that as well. Yeah, the goal with this is really to get both EAs reading the newsletter and thinking more about US policy and like how it affects cause areas that we care about and how we might be able to work on these issues. We also list job opportunities in each newsletter. So maybe if people are really inspired after reading the newsletter, they might look at some of the job opportunities and think about getting into policy themselves. But the bigger audience, of course, really is there's a lot of people who are in policy who are not EAs. The biggest dream would be to be able to reach some of those people and really get them sort of seeing some of these policy updates in cause areas that maybe they think are important, but are not really seeing in the news all the time. Because like, you know, farmed animal welfare policy news is like not at the top of the headlines when I turn on, I have like headlines notifications from the New York Times app, and I don't really ever see anything related to farmed animal welfare there, right? So really getting people who are in policy and maybe do care about these issues, but it's not like top of mind for them, or they're not seeing this sort of stuff all the time, getting them thinking about like what's important in policy in these cause areas, and thinking about how they might be able to impact those areas would be really, really exciting for us. So I should have set this up beforehand. So I can screen share the website if you give me a second. Which also this website is going to be going away tomorrow and replaced with a website with the same content, but a bit of a different design. But anyways, I've lost this, I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah. Can everyone see it? I'm not sure what's showing up on your screens right now.
We see it.
Okay. Yeah, this is the website. It's bi-weekly, so releases every other Wednesday. So again, like tomorrow will be the 3rd edition of it. It maybe if I have more time in the future, we can make it more regular, but for right now, bi-weekly is quite enough. And yeah, you can see we cover, it's about like 10 minutes long to read. And like in our first issue, for example, we covered foreign aid, some foreign policy decisions, farmed animal welfare, climate news, democracy and voting, criminal justice reform, and immigration, and a bunch of COVID news, of course, and listed some job opportunities. So that's like what the first edition of it looked like. And yeah, future editions are going to be pretty similar. Yeah, I don't have much more to say than that. So questions, and I will send the link in the chat if people are curious or want to sign up.
Hey everyone, this is Caitlin. I just wanted to say the site also has, there's like a resources page. So like people who are maybe who have never thought about policy and you're interested in getting into policy like casually or professionally. There's a whole list of resources there as well. So it's not just the newsletter.
Yeah, sorry, forgot about resources. Yeah, okay. So questions. Ashley, how are the newsletters drafted / policy areas selected? It's a little bit of an informal process, I gotta tell you. I mean, so throughout the week, we just kind of track news that seems important, that like, it seems obviously important enough to include in the newsletter. So sometimes I've found stuff that was like not obviously in a specific cause area that I was focused on, but I was like, oh, this is clearly very important. So then I added it. But then also like I have like that list of cause areas that you guys just saw, and just kind of like search different news sources for like stuff that might have happened related to that topic. And yeah, just keep collecting that news throughout the week and then put it all together the night before. Mike, do we focus on popular news and spin it towards EA causes? Not really. I'd say we find, I mean, we're mostly just like, yeah, finding news that is already related to the topics that we think are important and like writing about it. A lot of it is just stuff that happens to also be popular news, but we really want to like highlight, like we don't want to cover just too much popular news, because then that's stuff that like people could be finding that anywhere, right? Like people are probably going to be signing up for this because they think like, okay, I'm going to see a lot of stuff in this that would be like I'm going to see a lot of news collected in this that would be not as widely covered elsewhere. So there's like, I mean, obviously some of the COVID stuff is like, it's big popular news, but it's important, so we still include it. But there's a lot of, I think most of it would be stuff that's like, is pretty important, but not like highly covered. I don't have a great idea on the percentage of the ratio of those two things though. What's the division of labor been so far, and for preparing for the newsletters? Caitlin, I think we like pretty much spent an equal amount of effort in terms of like ramping up to like get the newsletter happening. I think now that we are writing it, I'm pretty much, Caitlin is writing the farm to animal welfare section of the newsletter, and I'm pretty much writing the rest of it. So not sure what the breakdown there is in word count or anything.
I also wanted to just quickly to say that like Arushi and I are not experts on all of these policy areas. So we actually have a few people who worked in EA / policy longer and like understand the risks of certain policies or something better, and they review it before we send it out. So they definitely help us as well.
Yeah, so you can have confidence that we're not saying anything like too stupid. Maybe like a little stupid, but not too stupid. William, how do you see the project running going forward? It looks like it might be quite time intensive. Yeah, I mean, it is somewhat time intensive. It's definitely, I think it's like 5 hours a week on average, maybe, which I don't know. I'm like quite enjoy it. I'm already pretty interested in policy, and like I've really enjoyed actually the process of just like finding the news involved that I like want to be able to put into this. But yeah, not sure. Might be useful to get interns in the future. I don't know if it's like big enough for that really. I think for the near future, at least, I think I can, or I think both me and Caitlin like can continue that time commitment, but yeah, maybe that will change in the future and we will try and figure something out then. Ken, that's a good suggestion. I think that was on my list, but I'll add it. I'm not sure. I've been checking it regularly. Yeah. Any other questions, folks?
If not, then
Just feel free to sign up. We would love to see your.
That's right, exactly. I was gonna say, like, how can we help besides like, oh, just sign up for the newsletter, friends. It's like, it's an awesome newsletter.
We're going to be posting it on the EA forum tomorrow. We haven't shared it there yet, so we're going to be sharing it for the first time on the EA forum tomorrow. So if you want to upvote that post or something, or share that post with people.
A super upvote from us.
And in particular, like, I think even beyond sharing it with like EAs who you think might be interested, if you guys have like policy wonky or like policy interested friends outside of EA, I think those are really some of the people that we want to have see this and see if they find it compelling, because that's a big part of the audience that we want to reach.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Arushi and Caitlin, and thank you all to the EA NYC ringers who just presented. It's really cool just to see, like, this, again, this was the inaugural ring cycle. This is the first time that we had ever tried doing anything like this, and I think it was really special just to see everyone work so well together, and it was just really very touching to see how everyone came together, and it was completely, you know, volunteer based, and some people put forth ideas that really had we wouldn't have necessarily thought that we would have gotten traction on, but then other people in the community said, like, oh no, I'm also interested in like basic income, or oh, I'm also really interested in like high impact policy. So it's really awesome to see how people kind of came together through this, and happy to say that it's probably going to happen again. And so if you're interested in joining an EA NYC ring, you'll be hearing about that later from us. Of course, that's just one way of getting involved with the EA NYC community. You can check our website, which is just effectivealtruism.nyc, for the many other ways that you can get involved with the community. And if you do have either ideas for a ring or a project that you'd like to work on going forward, like, you found your people. Like, you'd be surprised. I think we always encourage everyone to be as vocal as they possibly can be with their projects and desires, because your idea, like, you may have an idea for a side project, you've been toying with the idea, or like an app or a game or a podcast or a blog or in anything, and it's like, there might be, in fact, there probably are people in this community who would be like so happy to work on that with you. And in my experience, I've just been so blown away and impressed by the level of skill and quality and rigor that the people in this community have brought to bear on the projects that they work on. And so it's really just a joy to share our passions with you. And so I urge you to sign up and either start a ring or just post in the Facebook, or like message on the Slack, or send us an email, and maybe we can connect you with people who we know, me and Arushi, who are interested in who share your passions. So with that, I'm going to end the recording, and thank you all so much for coming. It's really been a joy to see you. It's always a joy to see you. And yeah, you'll be hearing from us again in the future of rings. And thank you so much, and have a great night. Bye.